From my research, I think Epstein's role as a government informant was simply his day job. His real job was working as the public-facing figure for elite families who are interested in the deliberate collection of sacred objects that are believed to give the owners of these objects otherworldly power. It involves elite patronage networks and human trafficking and ritual abuse, and they come at a price that most people would never be willing to pay.
All right, so that was a good start. And I agree with everything he just said, but there's two more layers to what Epstein had going on. The next layer is these guys weren't just collecting items. They were contacting entities. They were worshiping entities. They were building egregores and feeding the egregores. This is why they had to meet collectively and do the rituals together, or else they would just do it from their mansions separated across the world. The next thing is, on top of the things he just mentioned, then we also have what we all know about the abuse, the kidnapping, the blood drinking, the rituals, all of that type of stuff, right? So on January 30th, 2026, the United States Department of Justice released over 3 million pages of documents, 180,000 images, and 2,000 videos connected to Jeffrey Epstein. Within weeks, a British prince was arrested for the first time in over 300 years. A former British ambassador arrested. A former Norwegian prime minister charged with corruption. The president of the World Economic Forum resigned. Goldman Sachs top lawyer resigned. A former U.S. Treasury Secretary resigned from Harvard. The head of a Hollywood talent agency started selling his company. France's former culture minister is also under investigation. Commerce Secretary Lutnick is facing calls to resign, and the Attorney General of the United States was fired, right? So the mainstream narrative is this is accountability. Justice finally catching up. The system finally working. But if you read Revelation 17, you'll realize you're not watching justice, you're watching prophecy. You're watching the beast devour the harlot, and that's a very different thing than seeing justice being played out. So let's go over Revelation 17, 1 through 6, right? So Revelation 17 describes a woman, a harlot, sitting on a scarlet beast. She's dressed in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She has a golden cup full of abominations. On her forehead is written Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. And she's drunk on the blood of the saints and the blood of the martyrs of Jesus Christ, right? So most prophecy teachers identify the harlot as a religious system, the apostate church, or Rome, or some future ecumenical religion, right? And that's partially true, but the harlot is bigger than religion. She's the entire old world power structure, the entire thing, right? So the harlot is the class that the beast sits on, meaning she rides it, she uses it, she benefits from it, but she is not the beast itself. So the harlot is the political dynasties, the royal families, the multi-generational entertainment moguls, the academic gatekeepers, the financial oligarchs, the old money families who use the beast system for personal power, personal pleasure, and personal enrichment for millennia, right? So we look at the description: purple and scarlet, colors of royalty and political authority; gold, precious stones; pearls, concentrated, inherited wealth; a golden cup full of abominations, the pleasures they indulge in privately while presenting a public image which is clean, right? So they're drunk on the blood of the saints as well. And we can see that from the systems that they put in place historically that have persecuted genuine believers while claiming religious legitimacy. So now let's look at the Epstein network. Royalty, Prince Andrew. Let's go back to the montage. Let's go to this picture, right? So when we're looking at the Epstein network, we see royalty, Prince Andrew, political dynasties, the Clintons, academic gatekeepers, Lawrence Summers at Harvard, financial oligarchs like Leon Black, Bill Gates, entertainment moguls like Casey Wiseman, European political aristocracy. So we got Peter Mandelson, Jack Lang, Thorbjorn Jagland, the Norwegian royal family. These aren't random people. These are the different nodes of the old world power structure, right? So this is the harlot, not a single institution, a class, a network of people who accumulated power across every domain: politics, finance, academia, entertainment, royalty, and used that power for things their public image would never survive, right? Now, the beast is not the harlot. The harlot rides the beast. They're distinct. She uses the beast for transportation, for power, for reach, for enforcement, but the beast has its own will, its own trajectory. And Revelation 17 tells you what happened. So let's go back, all right? Here we are. Boom. Revelation 16 through 17, I'm sorry. And the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot, make her desolate and naked, eat her flesh and burn her with fire. That was 3 things. They will hate her, they will make her desolate and naked, they will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to accomplish his purpose. The beast turns on the harlot, he hates her, strips her naked, exposes her, eats her flesh, consumes her resources, her institutions, her power, burns her with fire, destroying what's left. So the beast is the system itself, the technocratic infrastructure, the surveillance architecture, the digital record keeping, the AI processing, the metadata, the email, the flight logs, the security cameras, the people who control it. And here's what you need to understand. The Epstein network, the harlot class, used the beast system for decades. They flew on private jets that kept flight logs. They sent emails through servers that stored every message. They walked through the buildings with surveillance cameras. They blackmailed influential people for control. They used financial systems that tracked every transaction, right? They used the beast's infrastructure for their own operations because they funded it. And the beast recorded everything. So we get 3 million pages of documents, 180,000 images, 2,000 videos on one man. Just one out of all of them. Now think about that, right? So where did all that material come from? From the beast's own infrastructure, the surveillance cameras, the email servers, the financial records, the digital architecture that the harlot class, the old world power structure, funded, built, and used, and recorded every move they made, right? That's what the beast did. So the harlot rode the beast, and the beast was watching the harlot the whole time. So now, why is the beast devouring the harlot now and not 10 years ago and not 10 years from now? And the reason is because the beast doesn't need the harlot anymore. That's the simple way to explain it. The harlot served a purpose during the build-up phase for the last few millennia. It wasn't a small purpose, but once you're useless to Satan, you're useless. It doesn't matter, right? So the old world power structure, the political dynasties, the ancient families, the financial families, the entertainment gatekeepers, they built the infrastructure. They funded the surveillance systems. They passed the laws that enabled digital tracking. They created the financial architecture that would eventually become the CBDC framework. They established the international organizations and institutions, the WEF, the UN, the EU, that will harmonize global governance. So the harlot built the beast's body, but now the body is built. The infrastructure is operational. AI is deployed. Digital surveillance covers the globe. So central bank digital currencies are live, are in development in over 140 countries, as we went over in the last video, or the first video, I'm sorry. So the neural interface technology is advancing as well. The system doesn't need these old gatekeepers anymore. In fact, the old gatekeepers are now a liability. They're compromised. They're PDFs. They have competing loyalties. They serve their own pleasure alongside the system's agenda, and those two interests don't always align, especially as of now. The beast needs a clean, consolidated authority structure with no competing power centers. The harlot, with her messy human appetites and desires, and her network of personal favors and blackmail and compromised relationships, is now in the way. So what happens? So the beast consumes her, not because the beast cares about justice, not because it cares about the victims, but because the transition from the old world order to the new world system requires the removal of the old gatekeepers, right? So Revelation 17:17. Let's go back to it right here. Boom. For God has put it in their hearts to accomplish his purpose, right? The beast isn't doing this consciously. The players involved, the technocratic elite, don't know they're fulfilling prophecy for the most part. At the highest level, at the apex, they always know. But everything is compartmentalized, right? So they think they're pursuing progress, evolution, or if they got personal agendas, they're settling scores or making political moves. But God is using the beast's own self-interest to accomplish what he already decreed 2,000 years ago. The harlot is consumed so the beast can stand alone. And when the beast stands alone, the final system is ready. So let's look at how the devouring actually works. This is the mechanism of Revelation 17:16 in real time. Make her desolate and naked. The exposure. 3 million pages, every email, every flight log, every photograph, every financial transaction. The harlot is being stripped naked before the entire world. And this is going to continue over time. Everything she did in private is becoming public. The golden cup is knocked out of her hand and the abominations are on full display to the world. And this is just the first major exposure, right? So let's go back to these crazy people, right? Boom. So we got Prince Andrew stripped of his titles by his own brother, then arrested, naked. Peter Mandelson resigned from the House of Lords, resigned from the Labour Party, then arrested, naked. Lord Summers resigned from Harvard, the institution that defined his public identity, naked. Thomas Pritzker resigned from Hyatt, his own family's company, naked. And let's be clear, they were also involved in well, I don't even know if I can mention on YouTube without getting shadow banned, but the CVAX, right? So Casey Wiseman, he sold his talent agency. His clients are fleeing naked, just like everybody else. And then the eat her flesh part, the consumption of her resources and institutional power. We see careers ended, fortunes threatened, institutional positions seized. The harlot's accumulated power, the positions, the titles, the network, the wealth is being consumed, right? We burn her with fire. The permanence of this destruction. These careers don't recover. These reputations can't rebuild. The fire is finality. Once the exposure happens in the digital age, 3 million pages searchable online. There's no burying it, no spin cycle, no rehabilitation tour. The fire is permanent, right? So, and we see that. Here are the flight logs for anyone that's interested. It's a real thing. You can copy this and go right to them. As well as, let's go to, remember, this was released on the Department of Justice. The Epstein files aren't a conspiracy. This was released by the Department of Justice itself. Got my videos mixed up. And now even here is Jeffrey's little black book. And I wanted to show this because look, as soon as you get in here, right? Look at the names you start seeing. David Blaine, Tony Blair, Michael Bloomberg. So we see billionaires, we see entertainers, and we see David Blaine, high-level magician, occult practitioner. So the exact flavor that we would expect in Jeffrey Epstein's book, right? Exactly. All right, and look, this is where I need to say something important, right? Because the wrong conclusion from this video is just as dangerous as the ignorance. So, let me pull this up for you real fast. Right? So, I need to say something important. This is not justice. These victims are not being served by this process. So this lady Virginia you see right here, who was the most vocal accuser, she died by suicide in 2025 before the files were released. The DOJ redacted the names of the perpetrators while accidentally unredacting the names of victims. So 31 people who were victimized as children had their identities exposed. So keep in mind, the system is not protecting the victims, it's using the victim's suffering as a moral cover for a power transition. And let's go back to scripture, right? The kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived luxuriously with her will weep and mourn over her when they see the smoke of her burning, standing at a distance for fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, the great city Babylon, the mighty city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. And the merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, for no one buys their merchandise anymore. So economic devastation. They can't sell everything no more. So complete economic collapse. Your corporations fell, infrastructure fails, everything surrounding it, right? We already know this is coming. So the kings weep, the merchants mourn, but notice they're standing at a distance. They're not trying to help the harlot. They're mourning their own loss of access to her system, their own loss of wealth, their own loss of money, right? So the grief is selfish. They're not grieving for the harlot. They're grieving for what they got from her. And that's what you're seeing in the public response from the Epstein files themselves. The people distancing themselves from it aren't horrified by what happened to children. They're horrified that their names are in the files and now they're being publicly viewed as who they are privately, right? So the grief is selfish. The distancing is self-preservation. The statements all say the same thing. I regret my association. Not ever once. I grieve for the victims. I regret my association. So it's about reputation, career, and access for these people. So don't mistake the beast devouring the harlot for God delivering justice. God is using it. Revelation 17:17 says so explicitly. God is using it. But the beast's motive is consolidation, not compassion. The beast will consume the harlot, then turn its full attention to the remnant, those who refuse the mark. So that's the sequence. Harlot consumed, beast stands alone, mark implemented, remnant targeted. So, and now I'm going to try to connect this a little bit to what we talked about in the other videos, right? So, in video 1, I did the market of beasts, and I explained how it was a 4-layer system: economic, biological, neurological, and spiritual. The infrastructure for that system is being assembled right now, but the old gatekeepers, the harlot class, are in the way. Too many competing power centers, too many competing agendas, too many people who can leverage their position to resist or delay the rollout, right? So the Epstein files are the beginning of the solution to that problem. Every compromised gatekeeper who falls is one less obstacle to a unified authority structure. Then the scrying mirror video I did when we talked about the electromagnetic domain and we established how spirits operate in that domain. The surveillance architecture that recorded the 3 million pages of Epstein documentation is the same architecture that monitors your digital life. So the beast didn't build a special system to catch the harlot. The system was already running, catching everything. The harlot just didn't realize she was being recorded too. Well, in actuality, these people knew they were being recorded because they were blackmailing each other. They just never thought that they would ever not be above the law. I think that's more accurate, right? So, and then the third video where I spoke on egregores, the old world power structure itself was an egregore, a consent-built jurisdiction occupied by an entity, multiple entities actually, and it had names, symbols, rituals, emotional investment, sacrificial investment, and enforcement, right? So the harlot system had all 5 elements: secret societies, initiation rituals, loyalty enforced through blackmail, but the larger egregore, the beast system, is consuming the old one, right? So the trithemius grid that we explained in the previous video doesn't need the old network anymore. It has its own now. Completely run by AI, completely automated, no human error. All right, so the sequence is clear if you read it in order. So in Revelation 17, let's go back. Where we at? In Revelation 17, the beast devours the harlot. The old world power structure is consumed. That's starting to happen now and will complete in full over time, right? So then we reference back to Revelation 13. The beast stands alone. The mark system is implemented. No buying or selling without it. The image of the beast, aka generative artificial intelligence, speaks and enforces compliance. That's what's next, right? So then we go back to Revelation 18. Babylon falls completely. The harlot has been completely consumed. Revelation 17 is now complete. The economic system collapses. The merchants weep. That's the consequence, right? And then we all know what happens next. Revelation 19, Christ returns, and the beast and the false prophet are thrown into the lake of fire, right? So The Epstein files aren't a scandal, they're a phase transition. The world is watching the beast eat the harlot and calling it justice, but the beast isn't stopping at the harlot. Once the old gatekeepers are removed, the beast turns its full infrastructure, the same surveillance, the same biometric technology, the same economic controlling technology, the same digital records, the same AI processing towards everyone else, and especially towards the Christians who refuse the mark, right? So that takes us to Daniel 2:44. In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom, and that shall never be destroyed. Right? So the beast devours the harlot, the beast implements the mark, and then the God of heaven sets up his kingdom. That's the sequence. So it's light at the end of this tunnel for us, right? And it's running exactly like that. So we're not going to celebrate the fall of the harlot as if the beast is our friend. The beast consumed the harlot because the harlot was in the way. That's why the beast is consuming the harlot, not to help the Christians, right? So once the harlot is gone, the beast has no more obstacles between itself and us. So we're watching right now, every headline, every arrest, every resignation is the clearing of the road, the removing of the old gatekeepers, the removal of the old world order so that the new system, the new world order can operate without interference. So the question isn't whether the harlot deserved it. She did. Revelation says so. The question is, what are you going to do when that beast that consumed her turns its attention to you? When the same system that tracked every email, every flight log, and every financial transaction of the harlot class turns that infrastructure towards enforcing the mark. That's what the next phase looks like, right? And the time to prepare for that, and the time is now to prepare before it arrives. And as we always know, my name is Trell, right? And I actually wrote a book called Tribulation to Eternity, where I go over a blueprint of what we can do to secure ourselves during the tribulation when all this stuff starts to play out, right? So if you could support the book, support the book. If you can't afford the $20, just find a way to reach out to me through my email or something, and I'll send you a free PDF, because the information is more important than any money we could get out of any of this stuff. God bless.